Okay, so I'm going to teach you guys everything you need to know about putting together an irrigation manifold. This is for landscaping, this is to irrigate plants, irrigate lawns, things of that nature. So I was on this project, you can see, and I'm going to build a manifold, build all these valves, piece everything together, and I thought I'd make you a quick video to show you exactly how I do it, the tricks that I do, what I do that have basically made me more reliable, less callbacks, send water in the right places, and basically have no hiccups, because the last thing you want is redoing irrigation. So let's dive in. I lined everything out for you guys to see. And the reason I did that is A, for you to see kind of how I'm building this, but the main reason I do it is to get organized and figure out exactly what I need and make sure I have everything I need. So if you guys look, this is kind of not making sense to you right now, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I have all my parts here, I have my box here, other parts and tools in here that we'll talk about. I have these, I have the wet and dry glue, I have the primer, I'll discuss those, I have Teflon tape, I have all my 1-inch parts basically. The tools I'm going to need are 2 of these wrenches. I prefer these vice grips because they have really sharp grabbing nodules in there that grab the pipes really well. You got a Sharpie, you got your tape measure. I like the extra wide ones. You got sunglasses for when you're using the cutting to cut these things. They do sell bigger cutters than this that cut through this nicer, but I chose to go bigger and get Schedule 80 pipe that you can see how thick this is. It's much thicker than normal PVC, so I can be harder on it and go faster, and it's a little more burly. So I like to use this stuff when I can with manifolds, because sometimes there's a lot of people stepping on the boxes and stuff, and this makes it stronger. So this particular tool normally will go through Schedule 20, which is these, but with Schedule 80, it's pretty hard for me to cut through. So I'm going to use this. This is actually a cheapo 9-inch diamond blade grinder. You can use anything really, even a hand hacksaw is fine, but I like this guy. This was about 120 bucks. Cuts through pavers really well. I actually like the diamond blades cutting through there because, as you can see, the cuts are extremely clean. It has very few little fragments, and I like that. So let me show you what I'm up against. This is our old valve system, and it's fine. It's actually working fine, but there's 2 problems. I have water features that need a refill valve, and I'm using this with the blue lock, and I don't have another valve accessible because someone put an elbow here. So I can't add another elbow, and there's not enough room in between these for me to cut in and tie into that. So I'm going to eliminate all these and do all new, and I'm going to do the same structure over there, but with new valves and with an additional valve for the pond refill valve. Okay, so landscaper's trick. One thing that a lot of people probably don't know is that you can take this valve box, here's our valve box. I believe this is a jumbo. I like tan because it's a little nicer looking. You can flip this upside down, and you can flip the lid upside down or keep the lid upside right. And this becomes a good bundle to throw all your tools in for this specific valve box that we're going to build. So you can always grab this at the irrigation store, throw it in the truck, drive to the job site, and you have this ready. You don't need bags, you don't need paper ripping everywhere. So this is a good tip. Good way to stay organized too. So let's dive in. First off, what I did is I took this out and I flipped this, and what I'm going to do is gather these parts and I'm going to align them inside this valve box, and I'm going to space these out a little bit. And I did this, and I planned on where I'll kind of more or less have my valves going in like so. And I took my measuring tape and I measured that the average spacing I want is about 1/2 inch. Hopefully you can see that. And then I can take my tape measure and push it in here to see where it hits that flange. Hopefully you guys can see that in there. So if you look, by the time it hits that flange, it's 1 inch. See how that is? 1 inch. So I know that I have 1 inch on this side glued in, 1 inch on this side glued in, and 1/2 inch in between. So that tells me that I need basically 2.5 inch pieces, and I'm going to use this. I measured 2.5 inches here. I'm going to throw my sunglasses on because I don't like PVC in my eyes. And this may not be OSHA approved, but I simply step on this and grab my grinder. And we got it cut. See how there's like little flanges here? This is not what you want. So old landscaper's trick, run it across the concrete as you rotate it. This takes off most of those flanges. And as you can see, that got it pretty darn clean. I'll do the other side. Now I'm gonna you can take your knife and go around the inside of this. And do you see this little fragment? This is what could get caught inside your valves. And you don't want that in there. So that's why I'm doing this, is I'm cutting all this out. That way that's not in there. If you want and you don't have a knife handy, you can also take your screwdriver or your tool here, your channel locks, put it in here at an angle and twist it. And as you can see, I got all those little fragments off there. So this is clean, it's ready to go. And there's no little burrs inside there that are going to go inside those valves and clog it up. That's a big no-no in irrigation. So I'm gonna cut a few of these and fast forward. Okay, so now we got these things cut. You see I can kind of space them in between to make sure I got the right ones cut. Real quick, I'm gonna go through with my knife, shave all these out. Okay, so we got that spaced out. Now, just so you guys know, this is all 1 inch parts, 1 inch. And the reason we do that is because the standard valve we use in landscape irrigation is 1 inch. This is just the common size for most irrigation until you get into the big boy irrigation where you're sending water a long way for huge lawns type of scenarios typically. So these hunter valves have always served me well. They're very easy to rebuild. They don't clog too easy, and they have some nice options and features that I like with these. So a lot of times I'll use these. There are different valves that work better for different types of like waters that are on wells and such, but that's a whole different story. So for now, use these guys. These guys will treat you right. I should note that we're keeping everything 1 inch until it goes into the valves and it comes out, and then we have a reducer that's threaded on the inside. It's threaded on the outside. It goes in here. And then this hooks up to our drip line. So it reduces it from 1 inch to 3/4. This will thread on here. And then this attaches to our drip. So what this means is that we have 4 drip zones and a 5th zone that is for blue lock for a pond refill valve for 2 ponds. So what I would typically do now is I like to do the threading part first before the gluing part. And I'm going to move everything onto a cleaner slate because keeping things clean is always key. Okay, so for starters, I like this wider Teflon tape. You can see how white it is. It's almost as white as my threads. If you get the little stuff, you got to go around like crazy, and it opens, it doesn't cling like this. So my advice to you is to get the thicker stuff. Also, I forgot, I want these valves shrunken down closer to these T's. So I measured it out. By the time it's sitting in there, I basically only want about 1 1/4 inches of it sitting out, and that's what this cut represents. So I'm going to cut all these, and then we'll get to threading. Okay, so here's the trick with Teflon tape, is a lot of people unroll it and they go opposite the way that it threads, which would be this way. You want to go so it tightens as it threads righty-tighty. So what we're going to do is, a lot of people would go like this and run it across, but what's weird is it kind of, basically it's hard to keep tension on it this way. So what I like to do is actually flip the tape around, and then the tension you have in your fingers is what dictates the tension on the tape. So all you got to do here is press your thumb on this, give yourself some tension, and then I press my thumb. See how it presses into there? And it almost gets like tacky inside those veins of those grooves. And now that's locked in. See how that goes locked in? So I'm keeping pressure by my pointer finger and my thumb, and we're just going to loop this around. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll do a 6th for good luck. And you don't need to cut this. You can just grab it, press on your thumb, and grab this, and just pull. And it tightened it. Look how it tightened into all these threads. And you can push just the excess over there. So look how clean that is. That came out really nice. So we got one. Let's do that with all the others. Okay, so normally I also go grab my fingers and I tighten it down on all of these. You see how it kind of gets the little details off the edges and into the threads? It's exactly what you want, just so it makes everything clean. See that? So now these are set. Now, it's very, very important for me to show you, see the bottom of the arrow and the top of the arrow? That's the direction of the water flow through the valve. So we need this valve not to face this way, but to face this way as it goes out towards the yard. I'm going to go in here, carefully thread this in, and just so you guys know, see I did about 1 turn on this, and you want to feel this tape already gripping inside here. So now I can, it's not like it free flows. Already I'm tightening as much as I can with my hands, and that's what you want. You want the tape to make a seal inside these threads before the top of this, like the edge of this pipe, bottoms out into the valve. So the pressure of the tape is making the seal inside that valve. And I tighten things pretty good with my hand. I'm going to grab here, and you can see these teeth on here. So instead of tightening like this, which is against that grain of the teeth, you tighten like so. And you're not going to grab where you glue, you're going to grab midway through. So see, I've grabbed that. I'm using my body. That's tight. We got one down. Now let's do all the others. Okay, so here's where I flip the camera around and tell you something that's very important. Before you do irrigation on any house, there's one thing that I think is very crucial. It's the law, it's the right way, it's the safe way, and it's the only way. So what happens is, let's say you have a house and your neighbor's house burns down or something happens and the fire department has to come. They go typically and they hook up to a fire hydrant, and that causes a back pressure, like a vacuum, from all the homes into that system sometimes. And there's other things that can factor that in too. What happens is these valves are meant to work one way basically. So when that happens, it can leach in dirty water from the yard through here back into the house. And it can poison people actually. So I know that sounds crazy, it sounds scary, but there's a device that's called a backflow preventer. It's a really cheap, usually really cheap, thing that you can put there. It's by code, it's by law, that's just the way things should be. It prevents the backflow of water into the house and therefore makes it safe and makes it up to code. So that way, if something happens, your home, your customer, whoever you're working for, even if it's on your own yard, you're protected that way. So this house has one. This is an odd case. This house has one that's kind of built into the watering system that stems from the garage. It's internal. For me, it's a dream because I don't have to put a backflow because it already has it built into this house. This house is exceptionally nice. But in me doing this almost 20 years, this has been the first house that's like that. So always add backflow preventers. The ones that I like are called atmospheric vacuum breakers. They work really well. They don't freeze in the wintertime commonly. And there's other ones if you're sending water uphill. So do your research, learn, go to the sprinkler shop, figure that out. It's just something that's really crucial. So let's dive back into the making of this whole sprinkler system. Okay, so we got rained out a little. It's a new day. I'm gonna finish this up. So we have all of our valves lined up. I do have this other pond refill valve on the end just for organization. And we got this all straight, as you can see, nice and straight. So let's prime these up first. We're going to push this end sideways, rotate it as it gets forward, and I'm going to use the earth as I push this down to make sure that it's actually straight up and down. Let's repeat that process. Okay, so another word of knowledge. Typically, your backflow preventers, which I was talking about earlier, will come out of the valve to a Schedule 80 nipple, which is this gray part here, and they'll come up and over and have that backflow unit up there, and then another metal pipe that goes all the way back down and then out to this fitting. So this house I'm working on already has backflow built into it, which is very rare. So most of the time, each zone valve has a backflow preventer, and that backflow typically needs to be higher than the highest point that you're watering if it's an atmospheric vacuum breaker. The other way you can go is you can put a backflow preventer here, something like a pressure vacuum breaker, and that always maintains pressure, and you can send water uphill with that, and the benefit is it's one unit instead of 5 units on this setup. The downfall is that that one can freeze, so you have to winterize it each winter. So there's different pluses and minuses to putting different backflow prevention on these devices. Now, also, one trick that I do is if I have a lot of valves, let's say I have 5 to 12 valves or 5 to 20 valves, whatever. One thing I can do to save costs and not have freezing issues is I can put down here, like before all this, I could put one of these valves here and wire it in with the common and wire it in with the master valve that's on the timer. And this valve will be one valve that is before this gets pressured up. And it has one backflow preventer that goes up, backflow preventer, atmosphere, vacuum breaker, and goes back down into the main line. So on your timer, you're going to wire that into what's called the master valve. And what the timer does is when it turns on, let's say zone 1 or zone 2 or whatever zone might turn on, it also kicks on this valve, and that's just so it can pressurize the system too, and it's keeping the vacuum breaker from having any chance of backflow into the house and contaminating things. So just so you're aware, you can also sometimes save costs. Instead of me spending the time and the cost to put, let's say, 5 or 6 backflow preventers, I can just put one over here with an additional valve, and the valve is like 20 bucks. So it saves me, like on that setup, it would save me probably, let's say, 45 minutes of using Teflon tape, winding up all these metal pipes going upward and all the parts associated with that. So instead I can buy one valve, one backflow preventer here, and run that whole setup just like that. I hope that helps. Okay, so a couple words of wisdom here. Every single manifold that you install should have what's called a gate valve or a safety shutoff valve. This is crucial because if there's a leak here and someone can't get to it in time, the customer's got to turn off water to their entire house typically to stop this leak. So, on the other hand, you can put one of these guys in. Usually they'll put an inline somewhere before it gets to these, and then you can put a 2-inch pipe all the way leading up out of the earth with a little cap on it, and that way you can put that pronged tool in here and actually turn it off and turn it on. It's good for winterization too. So use these. The yard on this one has a hand one that he wants me to use. It's a ball valve. But typically, I bought this just so I could show you guys, typically you want to always put one of these on. You got to do it. It's going to help you fix any repairs later. It's going to help the person down the road 20 years from now be grateful that you put this in. So do that. Next up, these 3 drip zones are sending water really far, and they're an entirely different setup to go way out towards the front yard. So I'm going to use every bit of pressure this house has to send water that far. Now these 2, on the other hand, this is for an inner courtyard, only 20 feet from this zone, and it's only got a couple bubblers. So I want this pressure to be low, because with drip, you want something ideally around 40 psi to 30 psi, maybe even 25 sometimes. So if you run these drip emitters here in my area at 70, 80 pounds per inch of water, it's going to start blowing off emitters and having issues. So for these, you can put an inline pressure reducer. You can see this one has 40 psi, and this actually can go in line right here, if that makes sense. I'll move this down a little bit. And then you can attach your drip to it. So this is a good way to do things. Now, I'm going to test a new option, which I think will work very well. Hunter came out with these. It's called AccuSync. Well, you guys dropped in the process. So what you do is you have this on there. So you thread this on the same way. You just be careful not to cross thread. So that's on there. Now what I didn't realize is this is independent inside. I'll show you. So we screw our solenoid in, and that way this can, see how it moves all the way through? So you can plug this here, I'll turn it on a side view so you can see. So I hold this straight and I can tighten this puppy all the way in. That one's good. Here's how the packaging looks. So what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to adjust the pressure of the water that comes out of each of these valves right here. There we go. As you can see, these are all aligned up in there. Really nice. Now we have an entire manifold system. So we have 3 zones that are meant for drip that are far away. Going to utilize all the pressure we have because we're expecting some loss in pressure, which is called friction loss. That's actually the friction between the water and the outer perimeter of the tubing as it travels. So we're expecting friction loss for these. These guys are close or very low pressure, and we can adjust them this way. Let me show you. If you can see that. See that little deal move? We can adjust the pressure. Ideally, I want our pressure on this one at about 40 psi, and I want our pressure on this one also at about 40 psi, right there. So we're set. Okay, so a bit of knowledge, just so you guys know. We got this glued up. See how everything's even, everything's in line, everything's symmetrical. We're looking really good. So those of you who don't know, this is the valve. This is the solenoid. This is what electronically turns the valve on and off through a signal through electric here. Now, you ask yourself, why is there two wires to each thing? And that's because you're going to take one wire, it does not matter which, from each solenoid. For simplicity, we'll just use the left one of each of these valves. Okay, so we have this. We take off these little end caps. And then you're going to wire all of these together. And this is what's called your common wire. So this, I'll put it this way. These stay together and get wired by a wire-proof water nut, along with the white wire that is the common wire that goes to your water timer back in the garage or on the side of the house or wherever the water timer is. Now, for simplicity, let's just tuck these here so they don't get in the way of my explanations elsewhere. Now, the other remaining zones, let's say we move left to right, zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This gets wired to a colored wire on the timer. So this wire goes to, let's say, a red or blue, whatever color you want to put, as the timer wire goes from here to the valve box, all the way cruising through to the timer. So this wire needs to be connected directly to the zone that you want on the timer. This is your zone valve. Then on this one, you can make, let's say, this is front yard. You could put it to the front yard on the timer. You can put this to the backyard, this one to the side yard, this one to whatever you feel like, and then this one could be our pond refill valve. So these are what you have for your zone wires, if that makes sense. So each zone is represented by one of these other wires that we didn't use. So what happens when the timer kicks on, it sends power to the common wire. So all these valves, they get a little bit of, only one of these gets power, like common turns on, but only one of the zone valves gets turned on at a time. So it cycles through, sending power through common through all of these, and then per zone valve. Okay, so you can tell our valve box, it fits in here. See how it fits? It fits pretty good. I could have shrunken these down a little bit and made it fit a little bit better, but at least now I have enough gap in here so we can rotate these out and replace them without removing the rest of the system if we need to. Now, I would recommend on this specific valve box, I think this is called a jumbo, I'll have to look, that you only fit about 4 per box maximum, so you have extra room, because this one, I'm not going to be able to get it very good. So I might set this block, or set this up on blocks, so it's functioned a little bit more like so. And that way it's lifted, you know, obviously on some pavers, so it's sitting like this. Now, one thing I need to tell you guys that's crucial is if you're in an area that freezes, not like Florida, but let's say you're in Colorado or so, you need to make sure that you're putting all of these things. You need to make sure that you're putting all of these components. So you need to make sure you're putting all of these components below frost level. So in my area, my frost level is 18 inches. So I need to make sure that this is from ground 18 inches all the way to here. So from here on the top of these guys, above to ground is at least 18 inches or deeper. In some places it might be 2 feet, in some places it might be 3 feet. If that's the case, you can put this guy on there, and if you need to increase the size, they sell extensions, box extensions, which bump it up every so often, and you can get the depth that you need. And that way the lid fits on here and things are looking really nice in here. Hope that helps you guys. Hope you now know a little bit more of the ins and outs about building a manifold. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Let me know if you have any questions or concerns on how to do anything. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Looking forward to helping you guys. Thank you.